Hello, everyone. I am your host, Deacon Adam Roberts of Stories That Work, and
I'm your co-host, Father Matthew Howell.
I often
Hey.
mess up. I got to stop messing up the order. I should say, welcome to Stories That Work. I'm your host, Deacon Adam, but I'm so nervous that I'm going to mess it up that I mess it up because
And
I'm nervous.
you're clicking buttons and whatever. It's okay. I think people understand this is a low quality program.
Don't say that before our guest comes on. I don't want him to know. To redeem the moment, will you start us with a prayer?
Yes, in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. O heavenly King, O Comforter, the Spirit of truth, who art in all places and fillest all things, the treasury of good things and giver of life. Come and abide in us, cleanse us from every stain, and save our souls, O good one. Amen.
Amen. Do you have any updates?
Nope.
Nothing.
You?
Actually, are you allowed to talk about what you were doing yesterday?
Nope.
Oh, that's even better.
I took my kids to an archery lesson. So
No. After that, what did you do?
No.
Okay, good. We'll keep it a secret. That's even more. At some point, I want you to consider like talking about it here because your whole process has been quite interesting.
Yeah, we'll see.
Okay, we'll save it for later. So I have a couple of updates. We're still working on the resource related to inviting people to church, and there's so many different things related to this. There's like how does that conversation go? The actual invite themselves, when they show up at church, the follow up. Like there's all sorts of ingredients to this. So we're putting a lot of time into what this looks like, but it's quite interesting. I'm enjoying it. And I want to say a reminder, I don't know how many of you our episodes our audience has seen, but I'm still getting feedback on a regular basis on our newly released docuseries In the Name of Choice. So if you have not seen it, it's free. I'll share a link in the comment section. We just had someone today that found it by surprise, and they kind of attacked it at first based off the title because they weren't sure what it was. And then she went, oh wow. And like she's commenting almost like a live commentation as she's watching it. And then she shared it into some private groups, kind of blown away, like it's not what she expected. And I keep hearing that over and over from people. It's just not what you expect. No matter what side of the issue you're on, it's something to go check out. So please consider at least watching episode 3. That's what I tell people. If you can't find time, go watch episode 3. You will not regret it. You really won't. So
we are working on a project related to the treehouse, which is in one of the episodes.
Yes.
Are you allowed to talk about that project yet?
I can. We're working on several different things. Okay, so we're working on 3 locations for a summer internship.
Through the St. Athanasius College.
Through St. Athanasius College, yeah. So we're still working on the details. These are for 18 to 28-year-olds. The 3 summer internships will be returning to Pittsburgh with Father Paul Abernathy at the Neighborhood Resilience Project, assuming all this works out, God willing, right? Like, who knows what's going to happen between now and next summer? Who really knows? But we're going to make plans for God, for his kingdom on earth. Like, we want to continue to reach out to our college students, right? This is something that we know. So we're working on a repeat location there. We're working on, and that will be co-ed. That's the current plan. That just everybody's listening, just know all this could change. But we're planning on that being a co-ed location. Then we're looking at a female-only location in Wichita, and you get to intern at the Treehouse featured in the docuseries In the Name of Choice. And so that conversation is going well. And there will be some interaction with the cathedral there, depending on their availability and our availability. And there'll be something, I don't know what exactly it's going to look like. That's probably also, for each location, we like you to plug into a parish. That will be the parish where we are a resource and a blessing and not a burden. I'm trying not to bring these interns as a burden to the location. They should be a blessing. So anybody in the area of Wichita, don't get nervous. We're trying to bring some help. Same thing in Pittsburgh. And then the third and final location that we're working on, this is male only. is at the Lady Minster Monastery. If you've not seen that was my second documentary I made, but that's in the Colorado Rockies. And it's going to be a very rugged summer for guys with hiking and chopping wood and lots of church services. And if you don't know anything about Lady Minster, you can go to ladyminster.com and learn all about it. But it'll be a guy's summer. It'll be great. Just several weeks up in the high altitude, and the trails there are wonderful. So those are the 3 locations we're working on. We're also working on a gap year, but I don't know. We're kind of evaluating a few locations for a gap year a year from now. That will be nine months long. And for same age group, we're looking at Boston, we're looking at Chicago, we're looking at Louisville, we're looking at Nashville. And there's a lot of ingredients that have to come together to make work. But St. Athanasius College is working pretty hard on putting together some really unique experiences, basically. That's my update.
Awesome. That's a great update.
Yeah. So I think we're ready to bring on our guest.
Okay.
Hello, Uncle Paul.
Hello. Good to see you, Adam. Deacon Adam.
That's all right. I know you've known me a long time. Do you mind? Right, you should introduce yourself.
Well, I'm Paul Finley. I'm the local director of St. Herman House Focus Cleveland. It's a men's shelter and outreach center that's part of Focus North America. And you said a 60-second bio, which isn't easy, but I came into Orthodoxy with the Evangelical Orthodox Church in 1987. I've been involved with them probably since 1975. Before that, and I've served in a variety of capacities with the Antiochian Archdiocese, most recently as the executive director of the Antiochian Village Conference Center in Western Pennsylvania.
Okay. And I have to be nice to you because you are the godfather of my wife.
That's right. Your wife and her lovely sisters.
That's right.
And you are the brother of the very Reverend Father John Finley, who is the head of the Department of Missions and Evangelism. So he's the boss watching over the show. And I noticed that you did not include that in your bio. So I'll let you guys work that out over Thanksgiving dinner.
I had a feeling he would come up in the conversation. And if you all don't treat me right, I know who to call.
That is completely true.
But the first thing you said, though, that you are the director of the St. Herman House, that is why you are on the show today. We want to talk to you about the St. Herman House.
Well, I can give you a bit of an overview of what we do, and maybe a little history is good to know as well. The St. Herman House started as an Orthodox monastery in inner city Cleveland in 1977. And it was started actually by an Orthodox monk and an Orthodox nun who together, mostly with her resources and his leadership, bought this huge old Victorian house in the 1880s and established in what was then one of the worst neighborhoods in the city, an outreach whose culture was centered around a life of prayer. And there were never a lot of monks there, but it always was committed to outreach in terms of homeless people living below the poverty line, serving 3 hot meals a day, and sheltering homeless men. And it continued in that way for about 35 years. In 2011, it went through a transition. It disbanded as a monastery. And in the midst of that transition, a dialogue began with the local clergy in Cleveland to bring it under the auspices of Focus North America. And, in my mind, even though I wasn't here, that transition period was a beautiful time for St. Herman's because it sort of, shed a light on one of the things we do, and that is the people that we help become our best helpers. So even during a difficult time when there was no leadership there and no real direction, it was homeless men who had come there for help, who continued serving 3 hot meals a day, sheltering the poor, distributing the groceries, distributing the clothing. And, I always say that our bishops, least I know the Antiochians, when they come to visit a parish, they love to say in their prayers, "Oh Lord, bless this God-protected community." And I always think about St. Herman's as a God-protected community. And I think we define it in some ways because it's a community that kept going, even though all the leadership had essentially abandoned it for a short period of time. But there was a local city councilman, a local pastor who approached our Orthodox clergy here in Cleveland, said, this place is very important to the community. Nobody has a clue how many people they help, they feed, they shelter. What are you going to do to save it? Because there was talk of it disbanding after the monastery disbanded. And actually, one of our local clergy, the dean of the Greek Orthodox Cathedral, Father Stephen Callis, really took up the banner of St. Herman's, formed a board. It became St. Herman House of Hospitality, Inc. It began a dialogue in Focus North America. And when I arrived here, my first day on the job was January 1st, 2013, it officially became part of Focus North America under their leadership, and all the properties and everything transferred to them. And, a lot of my goal was just to try to continue and grow the work that had already been founded on a good foundation and had a lot of support and potentially a lot more support from the Orthodox churches. There are 29 churches that participate in the Greater Cleveland Council of Orthodox Churches, and it's a great witness to our ability to work together, even with all of our various jurisdictions, and the sometimes difficulties that go with that are really overcome at St. Herman's because everybody believes in helping people in need. So we just continued to kind of grow that process of sheltering homeless men. Our numbers, went up in terms of how many we were sheltering a year. The number of meals we were serving went up. And I think because Focus provided a lot of great leadership for us there, our ability of doing groceries, the clothing, all these things. A lot of the men that were there weren't really getting much direction in terms of the case management they needed. People come to St. Herman's with a lot of different issues that brought them there. It's, there's addiction, there's mental health, there's employment failure, there's relationship and family failures, there's educational deficits, and it's never one of those. It's always a lot of that packed into one bag that causes them to be there. So, one of the first things I did was just work real hard on making sure that everybody that was staying there was in a relationship with a case manager at one of the surrounding neighboring agencies. And then I would just try to hold them accountable to that relationship. When I first got there, it was just me and a cook. We were the only paid staff and still doing a tremendous amount of work. I think that first year I was there, we served 66,000 meals and, probably sheltered 45 or 50 men. And we have a capacity at that time of 28 men. Maybe to jump forward just a little bit, in that first year I'd been there, and I'm telling you the good stuff. It wasn't without its problems, as you can imagine. It was, because of a lack of direction, a lack of leadership. But there was a house came up for sale 3 doors down, and it had already been carved up about 75 years ago. It's another very old Victorian house into 12 individual units, almost like it was made like a group home or something. It had a common living room, dining room, and kitchen. And it came up for sale, and they were asking, it's like 5,200 square feet. They were asking $120,000 for it. And I went over and looked at it, and I thought, I need this like I need a hole in the head, more people and more to deal with. But I had if you don't indulge me to share a story, the very first guy I took in January of 2013 walked up my drive with his cousin He was a chain smoker, had cigarette hanging out of his mouth, liquor on his breath. He was holding his chest because he was having chest pains. And the cousin handed him off to me and said, "We're done with him. He can't stay at our house anymore." And I'm like, "Oh, I've never done an intake. I've got to figure that out." So I walked him in, and he really was a tremendous encouragement to me, because he was the first guy, and not all do this, but he did extremely well. Not only did he start dealing with his addiction, he was 62 years old, but he was successful at it. He never had another drink after that day he walked up there. He got some medical attention that got his health in order. He even stopped smoking, which was remarkable because he was a lifetime smoker. And I was driving him to actually a family member's residence to pick up some of his belongings in Akron. And on the way, he announced to me that he was thinking about moving. And just to get the chronology here, I took him in January. Now it's about April. This house is for sale, and Nate's still. And I said, well, Nate, if you move out of St. Herman's and you can't come to the prayers every day, which he did. You can't help serve the meals every day, which he did. You can't walk across the street to the little church that has 4 AA meetings a day, and you don't have the accountability and the support to getting from St. Herman's. How well do you think you're going to do? And he said, well, I think it's going to be bad. And I said, well, what if we had a place where you could live very near us, and you could rent a room or actually pay a program fee and have an affordable place to live, but still pray with us, still serve with us, still go to those addiction sessions and continue your progress. He said, I'd love that. And that really began the ball rolling. In 3 months, we raised $200,000 from the Orthodox community to purchase outright, repair this house. And almost from the day it was open, it was full. And it has been ever since. And so it's given us an opportunity to take people that come to St. Herman's homeless and then let them take a step towards independence, but still with the accountability of support of St. Herman's, and including learning the responsibilities that in life there are monthly expenses. And so they do pay that program fee. So I'm rambling a bit, but I told you a little bit about the main house, St. Herman's, which holds 28 men. That transitional house holds 12 men. So at any given time, I have 40 men in residence. And, there's another piece to what we do. It's a farm in Trumbull County. It's very much in a developmental stage, but our vision for that is to develop a program that will be sort of a tandem jobs, work ethics program, and an addiction recovery program. And since I've been there, we've built 3 greenhouses. One of them's still in the works, but we actually had help from Project Mexico to build one. One was donated by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Another was donated by one of our strongest supporters. The third one was donated by the Mother Maria of Paris Benevolent Society, which is a ministry of the Midwest Diocese of the OCA, which is under Bishop Paul. And, I said when I started that I started with myself and a cook, but over the course of time with these 3 entities, the main house, the transitional house, and the farm, I've been able to add an assistant director, Miss Anthony Loises, who's just really brings a lot of expertise to our organization, expertise that I don't have, but she's a whiz with communications, fundraising, grant writing, a lot of things that we were missing in our organization. Last fall, we were able to hire a full-time farm manager so that we could accelerate the process of the development of the farm. And then this year, through a very generous grant from the Cleveland Foundation, we were able to hire a full-time case manager who's now working at St. Herman's. And we still have our cook, Carl Cook. His last name's Cook, but he's way more than a cook himself. He's, he has lived the life of the people that we serve. And I know he wouldn't mind me saying this because he posted on Facebook, he just celebrated 15 years of sobriety.
Thank God.
In a couple of weeks. But he has become a well-known public servant in Cleveland in his own right. And he has his own little small nonprofit where he does some significant work over on Cleveland's east side. So, all those things together, and I often describe the three, the main house, the transitional house, and the farm as a tripod. And, we all know that a tripod, I know, Adam, you do a lot of filming. I'm guessing you put that camera on a tripod from time to time. Am I right?
Yes.
And what it allows you to do is, even on a fairly unstable surface, to create stability so that your picture or your video is clear. It's in focus. So our hope, our prayer is that these three legs of the work we do at St. Herman's will allow a person to bring his life into focus, and he can get a clearer picture of what his life can be rather than what it has been. And, that's a very important part of our work. And they can do that even when their foundation, the surface out of which their life arose, their home life, whatever, it's most of the time very unstable. And a lot of, we see a lot of PTSD in the homeless population. And, but despite that, we've got something we believe that can help people bring that life into focus and give them some hope, give them some possibility. And maybe the last thing I'll say, since we have representatives of the Department of Missions and Evangelism here, headed, of course, by the very Reverend Father John Finley, my elder brother. See, I did get him in there after all. One thing that I know is that you can only do so much meeting a person's material need. Yes, we all need a job. We all need a place to live. We need food to eat. We need to deal with our addictions and stuff. But ultimately, there's the matter of the soul, and there's the matter of the heart. And your ground never really gets too stable if you don't begin to cultivate the heart and you don't begin to plow that ground. And so, part of the life of St. Herman's is we have first hour prayers every morning at 6:30. We have ninth hour prayers every afternoon at 4. We have the Office of the Typica, which we celebrate all these as reader services. The men participate. We do that the first Sunday of every month. And there's icons here and there in the house, and we have a beautiful little chapel there. And also that they will know that the heartbeat of our culture at St. Herman's is really our faith. It's not the provision, it's not the bag of food, it's not the material things. Those are gateways, for people to have an opportunity, by the way we live our lives here at St. Herman's, to see the kingdom of God and to witness and experience his love for them. And there's a lot of things we require at St. Herman's in terms of behavior, substance abuse, following rules, being respectful to other residents and our non-resident guests. But we don't require participation in, for instance, the Bible study, which I don't think I mentioned, that those are participated in voluntarily, and yet there's always people there. And when we're not living in COVID world, there's always both residents and non-residents at these things. So, I have a lot to be thankful for. I've probably learned more about myself and what God's done for me doing this than anything else I've ever done. So did I go half the time yet, Ed? I'm not watching the clock here. I don't know.
We've gone, and I've gone along, and I know you're on a tight schedule, so I want to address a couple of things.
All right.
If we can. First is we do have a question from Kenny. Hi, everybody, say hi to Kenny.
Hi, Kenny.
Hi, Kenny.
He's our fan, Paul. In case you don't know, Kenny is our fan, singular.
Yeah. What's his last name?
Scott.
Oh, okay. Because my boss's name is Kenny, and I thought,
Yeah. No, it's not Kenny Kidd. It's not Kenny Kidd. But Kenny wants to know what the H stands for in H. Paul Finley. I think it's because people don't know you have a history of maybe 3 different names at this point.
Yeah, it stands for Howard. And when I was in my youth, my mother and dad, and even when I was grown, when I would go back to my hometown of McAlester, Oklahoma, there were lots of folks that called me Howard Paul. They called me by both names, and but I've been known as Howard a lot of my life. But in my life in the church, I've been known as Paul, Uncle Paul, Father Paul, a variety of Pauls, and so I'm a man of many names, and I try to answer to all of them, including Honey, which my wife sometimes calls me. But
yeah,
it's Howard.
Yes. So my question for you is, I think what I see in St. Herman House, and I'm wondering if you have any stories of this, or if we're introducing the idea, is that you can be an inspiration for other metropolitan areas. This should not be the only shelter that is operated by Orthodox Christians.
Well, it makes me very happy that we do what we do in Cleveland, and it makes me very sad that it's the only city in America that kind of has it on this level. I mean, Pittsburgh's got a great ministry going there with Father Paul Abernathy. Kansas City has one. Focus has outreach programs in a variety of cities: Detroit, St. Louis, Orange counties, others. Ours is their largest, and for what it's worth, we have a annual budget now approaching about $500,000. We've got a lot going on here, and we see the fruit of it in helping a lot of people. But the key to it is one is sort of a function of geography and history. I mean, Cleveland has a lot of Orthodox communities. And if you go beyond that 29 churches in the Greater Cleveland Council, there's easily 50 plus churches in the larger neighborhood, and so there's some strength there that if they come together, they can do great things. But then the other thing is, I think there has to, this sounds stupid to say, but these churches in these different jurisdictions have to love each other. They have to want to work to each other. And, it is a good example of what can be done in Cleveland. Cleveland has a venerable history of cooperation between the various jurisdictions. Such so that the Assembly of Bishops even chose to meet here a couple of years ago to learn more about that, because this history of cooperation has produced St. Herman House, Zoe for Life, the Pantaleimon Society, St. Mary of Egypt, and there's others. And I think one way to move towards unity is to find something that you not only believe in common, but that you can do in common. And, so, I mean, how simple of it is saying, can't we help people together? Is that not something we can do? I'll tell you that to the degree that it doesn't work in some other cities, it magnifies the depth of the, I don't know what, well, I just want to call it sin, but that's because I grew up Southern Baptist and we believe in sin. But I mean, the depth of just how wrong it is that we're divided. But I think if we could at least begin to work together, to help people, and jurisdictions come together to support programs that want to help people, you can kind of get to know each other. You can get to know who's in, and all of a sudden, a lot of these barriers don't seem like barriers so much anymore. And if anybody believes it can't be done, there's a town in Northeast Ohio called Cleveland where it's been done for years. I mean, they've been doing stuff together. This clergy council. I mean, I don't know. There was a presentation I heard. It seemed like it's back to the 30s and 40s, and of this unique spirit of cooperation. As a matter of fact, I happen to believe if there's any place where you could do a test run of jurisdictional unity in America, it would be Northeast Ohio. You can, I mean, but see, I don't have anybody that can really get me in much trouble anymore. So but I can tell you, if you had a bishop of Cleveland, you might could demonstrate that it could work, and it would never mean I'm on it. This is a tangent. You said we got on.
You're gonna get a phone call from your brother later today.
I warned you that we get into tangents on this show.
Right, all right. I'm going to be really ugly here. So, but the fact that one thing is, if you tried it, the churches would not lose their cultural and historical identity. The Greek churches would still have their festivals, and people would still have. But if Northeast Ohio wanted to know what the Orthodox Church thought about an important issue in our society and culture, they'd have one voice to go to. And I've heard this discussed in some pretty large forums here in Cleveland with bishops present, and you almost get the sense there was a belief that it can't be done. The Roman Catholic Church has been doing it in Cleveland forever. Cleveland is a microcosm of America. There are Irish churches, Italian Catholic churches, German churches, Polish churches, Slovenian Catholic church, all these different ethnic groups in Cleveland that are Roman Catholic. And you know how many bishops of Cleveland there are? One. It can work. It can work. And in Orthodoxy, it ought to work even better because we believe we have the true faith and have seen the true light, right? Is that so?
I think the biggest takeaway for me is that you're talking about the takeaway for me is that when we cooperate and helping others, the barriers melt away, either physically or whether we think they're there and they're not, whatever way that is. And when we shift that focus outside of ourselves. And so, you and I both know some people that it's their life mission for jurisdictional unity. We know a lot of other people that didn't even know that they don't even know what we're talking about. Right. And so we have a spectrum of people, but right. The one thing that encourages me about Cleveland, and you've been telling me about this for years, is the coming together to help others, how that brings down the barriers.
Well, I was just going to say, everybody in all of our Orthodox churches understand the need for clothing. They understand the need for food. They understand the need for drink. They understand the need for comfort when you're sick. They understand the need to visit. They all understand that. So that's a multitude of things we have in common, which Jesus, by the way, seemed to think was very important. And the thing is, if you can understand you have these material things in common and that you can help other people, you might begin to understand that you have a bunch of things in common with respect to the soul. That, I mean, in other words, if you can come together as an organ, as multiple jurisdictions and give away clothing, you might figure out, you know what? Jesus gave us all the same garment of salvation. He gave us all the same food to eat, his body. He gave us all the same drink, his blood. He gave us all, the same comfort when he visited us in our bondage and delivered us from the things we struggle with. And he comes to all of us when we're sick, physically and spiritually. I mean, the good works reveals the spiritual works of Christ. And when I said earlier, I think I learned more here than I have anywhere else it's been. It's what I just said. It's working here made me realize that I'm the homeless guy. I'm homeless. And I found a shelter, and it's called the Church of the Living God. And there I came and arrived with all my brokenness and all my struggles and all my addiction and all my pride and all my bondage and all my thirst and all my hunger and all my nakedness. And there was a Savior and a people who would help me with my needs. And I think that one of the reasons Jesus wants us to do those good works is because we'll never understand what he's done for us if we don't.
I think what it reminds me of is it was not until I was Orthodox that I saw or heard about the perspective of the Good Samaritan and realized I'm broken and naked and beaten on the side of the road, and Christ saved me and took me in at his own expense.
That's right. That's right. And if Christ didn't abandon the thief or the man that was beat up on the side of the road, and he's not going to abandon us either, in our brokenness. And that becomes a sort of a very visual reality when we help those that suffer, that he's right there with us in our trials. One thing I've noticed, a lot of people that really engage with us as volunteers on site have their own set of pain that they're dealing with. And it's one of the ways they heal themselves, and not really heal themselves, but they experience the healing of Christ.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, we have a question. Are you receiving any support from non-Orthodox churches in the area, recognizing, the value of the house?
A tremendous amount. We have a lot of our monetary resources do come from the Orthodox Church, but we've been helped by many Roman Catholic churches, Protestant churches, evangelical churches, many businesses, individuals. I should be able to rattle off some percentages, but it's substantial enough that we would have difficulty making it without it. We've gotten a lot of support this year because of the work of my assistant in receiving foundation support, lots of funding, and they're recognizing the good work that we do. And one of the, I know, like when I was in Nashville, we used to go up to there in downtown. There was that Roman Catholic church that had that loaves and fishes. Mm-hmm. In most of our cities, our Orthodox faithful are going to Catholic and Protestant outreach programs to help the poor. In Riverside, California, when I was there, I used to go down to a Lutheran church in Garden Grove with some of our parishioners, and we would serve there. And it's very moving to me that in Cleveland, the reverse is true. that many people from non-Orthodox faith come to our house to serve the poor, and we welcome them. And and it's a witness for our faith without even saying anything. I mean, they see the chapel, they see the icons, they they get that this is an Orthodox thing, and look at the good work they're doing. So it's a powerful witness indeed, not just word of who we are. And I'm devoted to the Orthodox Church. I believe its word is true, but Jesus said, "Blessed are those who both do and teach the word of God." And if you look at that, I believe that's in the Sermon on the Mount. He puts the do before the teach. So we have to do His work in order to be able to effectively proclaim it.
That makes a lot of sense. I hadn't thought about it in that order. Father Matthew, do you have any questions?
No. I mean, this is so inspiring, and
It is.
and I'm impressed also that it didn't start off with a board and a program and whatever. I mean, based on the history you gave, it was two people who started praying and serving the poor in 1975, and then it grew from there. So sometimes we get lost in all the obstacles of formalities, and the good works stay on the shelf because we're afraid of the formalities and the legalities and whatever. But I'm impressed that it was a couple of people who got the ball rolling, and all those things, the board and the clergy support and the all the support you've received, and you coming in as director, that's all important. And God is working through all that, but the ball got rolling with just two people with prayer and good works and good intentions. And I think that's where other parishes can start.
No, I think that's a good and true observation with respect to St. Herman. And there's that saying, but it's that lex credendi, lex orandi, the rule of faith. It's the rule of prayer. In other words, how you pray is really going to determine what you believe, and I think, and it's going to keep your theology in the right place. And I really believe with St. Herman's that life of prayer that those two pious ascetics started, that all of the service was born out of the prayer, and it didn't happen the other way around. That prayer and that devotion produced all the good works, and God willing, we're continuing at that. And that the prayers we pray are still the mother, if you will, of the works that we do.
Yeah, and it really is kind of a throwback to the patron saint of St. Herman. He's the patron saint of my parish, and he didn't come to America with a program.
Right.
He didn't come with the support of the Department of Missions and Evangelism of the Russian Church, per se.
Right.
He was sent, and he was part of a group, and he was the last man standing, and his program was love, prayer and love.
Right.
And he just did what needed to be done to take care of the people right in front of him. And I think sometimes if we get too far down the road and everything else, we lose sight of that.
No, I agree with you.
Well, could you give us a closing story from St. Herman's?
A closing story. Boy, there's lots of stories.
Well, you told us about the first person who came through. How about somebody else who's also memorable, or?
Well, I'll tell you one. I don't know. Maybe this isn't the best one to tell, but it's coming to mind, so I'll tell it. I probably a couple of years into it, there was a African American gentleman, very it's almost, he could have been a body double for Saint Moses, the Ethiopian, Saint Moses the Blade. He was a stout figure, an impressive individual, and he started coming around when the weather started getting cold, that he was concerned he was going to be without shelter, and it turned out that he had a relationship that was breaking up on him, but it was a girlfriend. He was going to have to move out, but he was a Muslim, and he didn't know whether we would be accepting of him if he stayed there. But the closer we got to the end of December, the more desperate he would be in speaking with me at the meals. Finally, one day he came into my office weeping, and so we did the intake application. I met with him and, went over our rules and regulations and, what I expected from him. And, told him that we're here to help people. We're not, there won't be any different treatment because of his background. But he'd spent a lot of time in prison. But so I usually at the end of that interview, I'll say, "Welcome to St. Herman's," and I lean over and I shake their hand. Well, I said, "Welcome to St. Herman," and when I leaned over, he just put his head in his hands and started weeping. And it took him a while to get his composure. And my assistant, my house manager, was with me, so we just were. And I reached back and I grabbed his application. He still had it, and I took it. And I told him he had taken the name Abdul, which wasn't his real name. I said, why don't you tell me what's really going on with you? Because nobody cries as much when I tell them they can stay there. And he said, why do I have to live in a world where nobody loves me? My father abused me. My mother did nothing about it. And I said, usually when people come in here, they have one story, and it takes a while to get to the real story. But I think you just told me the real story. I said, have you been a Muslim all your life? He said, no, I grew up Methodist in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I said, well, do you even know what Islam means? He said, no. And like a lot of people that convert in prison and stuff, they don't really know much about it. I said, well, it means submission. And I said, you're never going to submit yourself out of that pain. You need deliverance. You need Bob Marley, deliverance story. You need redemption. And he started weeping all over again. And but I tell you that story just to tell you that a lot of homeless people have a pretty hard, rough exterior. And a lot of us have exteriors that don't represent what's really going on inside. But if you can peel back that exterior on people in need and people in suffering, that there's a lot of humanity that is really in agony and really in a struggle and really needs what we have, which is the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Wow.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, that's a beautiful. Thank you for letting us finish today's broadcast with that story.
Thank you for having me today. God bless you all.
God bless Uncle Paul. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for everything you're doing there in Cleveland. We hope that the St. Herman House is a beacon of light for the Cleveland area and a source of inspiration for the rest of our metropolitan areas, where we do have a number of metropolitan areas with enough churches to consider duplicating this, which is a good thing. That's not a bad thing. Let us imitate Cleveland.
Well, God willing, for the things we do that are good, for sure. So,
absolutely.
Say hello to Father Bro for me, which is...
I will do it. Thanks again for coming on, Father Matthew. As always, thanks for being my co-host.
Thank you.
Until next week, God bless.
Thank you, Deacon Adam. Thank you, Father Matthew.
Thank you, Paul.
Bye.